G'day, my name's Uncle Hodge and this is the Meathead Marksman channel. Today, on this episode of The Quiet Rifle, we are going to have a look at 3 options for very quiet rifles that don't need suppressors. In a lot of places, it's difficult or illegal to have a suppressed rifle. In my country, it can be legal, but it is quite difficult. You have to fulfill a bunch of different requirements, and I don't fulfill those requirements, so all of my guns are unsuppressed. But I also live on small acreage, so I don't really want to bother the neighbours too much. They understand what I do, and they're happy with it. But at the same time, I don't want to make excess noise. So most of the rifles that I have, or that I use here, are very quiet. And I've got 3 different options here to show you, in 3 different price brackets with 3 different levels of performance, so that you can make an educated choice on what sort of format that you really want to go for. So let's have a look. Right, option number 1. The delightful CZ 455 in 22. This is a Lux grade 2. Very nice, lovely looking walnut stock. And it has a 25-inch barrel. I believe it's 25, if not I'll annotate that. But the barrel length is important with this one. That was one of the main reasons why I bought it. It's not exactly a compact rifle, but with that long barrel, you can shoot these CCI 22 long rifle quiets at like that says they do about 710 feet per second. But we'll double check that on the Crony today. But yeah, very, very quiet with that particular ammunition. If you step it up to more powerful ammunition, it makes more noise, but it's a great option. And if you are sort of doing fairly short range stuff, it's excellent, especially for plinking. And it also has the added versatility of being able to shoot faster rounds if you are going somewhere like the range or to a big farm or something to go and pump some bunnies. You can use higher powered rounds, so that's always a good option. Option number 2, quite possibly the ugly duckling of the bunch, the Benjamin Titan Nitro Piston. So this one is in 22, and we are going to be running Cometer Exact Jumbos, the 15.9 grains. It says they're carefully selected by JSB. I don't know about that, we'll see. Probably just made under license or something, but this is a break barrel spring gun, essentially. It uses a nitro piston. When you break the barrel open and cock it, that cocking energy compresses a nitrogen-filled tube, and then when you pull the trigger, that tube is released forwards, and it creates a puff of air that blows that 22 caliber pellet out the end of the barrel. It suffers from all of the main problems that springers do. It's quite difficult to shoot accurately at long range. But it is extremely quiet, probably the quietest of the bunch, and it is also by far the cheapest of the bunch. So yeah, it has its pros and it has its cons. Option number 3, the gorgeous FX Crown. This is the primo luxury model of the bunch, by far the most expensive, but also very, very versatile. We will be running JSB Exact King Heavy Mark IIs, which is nearly a 34 grain Diablo pellet, but the beauty of this one is you can run it basically with a volume switch on the side of it. If you really want to turn the volume right down, you can turn the power settings all the way down to minimum, and it makes almost no noise at all. If you want to have sort of a mid-range, fairly powerful but not quite as loud power setting, you just go halfway, and if you want to max it out, you just click it all the way up to max and start banging away. And this one, I would say this, even on max power, it's still slightly quieter than your typical subsonic 22 long rifle, that is. So yes, also a very nice option, probably the most accurate of all of them too. So let's go and get some numbers over the Crony and get some numbers on the little sound meter and see where we end up. So that was the first cold bore shot, and it came through at 415 feet per second. But I don't know. That sort of something tells me that I should pull the barrel through first and just make sure that it actually did exit the barrel and that wasn't just something going flying through it. So better safe than sorry. All right. So that was it. Didn't get stuck in the barrel. Just being paranoid. So here we go again. Right, so there is 10 rounds of CCI quiet over the Crony. It looks like the loudest ones were 74 decibels, so not very loud at all. Good quiet rounds, but with that quietness comes a fairly large extreme spread, even only over the 10 round spread that we just did. The slowest one was, if you exclude that first cold bore shot, was 501 feet per second, and the fastest one was all the way up around 711 feet per second. So not very consistent ammo, unfortunately. But yeah, that's sort of the price you pay if you want to shoot super duper quiet 22 long rifle ammo. So we'll graph it up, stick it on the computer, and move on to the Nitro piston. Right, so the Benjamin Nitro piston. Surprisingly quite a bit more consistent. The slowest round was 692 feet per second, and it looks like the quickest one was around 736. So considerably more consistent than the super quiet 22 long rifle. But at the end of the day, throughout my experience, I've found that the consistency level of the actual muzzle velocity with a spring gun isn't necessarily as important as it is when, as opposed to being able to shoot it properly, because there's technique involved. So if you are willing to learn that technique though, pretty good numbers. So let's move along and we'll try a few different power settings on the FX Crown, see how that goes. FX Crown with the hammer wheel set to minimum, so see how quiet this one can go. FX Crown on power level minimum, that was fairly consistent, pretty good. It's important to keep in mind that you can actually tune the FX air guns, and I've got mine tuned for max power at the moment, so it's optimized at that level, so it has a very small standard deviation, extreme spread, all of that jazz. But it looks like it's doing about 79 decibels, which is still very quiet, so very usable, very quiet, and quite a bit more consistent than the other two, even on its minimum setting. So we'll jack it up from minimum up to 3 and hit it again. I've personally found that this power level 3 is the best all-round power level for small acreage shooting. It's accurate and it still carries enough clout to do what you need it to do, but it's also not anywhere near as loud as max power, so that's nice. Looks like that one was more consistent. ever so slightly louder. I'll have to double check that. It's saying 79 decibels as well. I suspect it sort of reset itself halfway through though, so we'll have to go back and review the footage. Whew, tell you what, it's getting warm in here. One last go. We got FX Crown on max power. So decock, wind her all the way up to max, let her rip. Well, a stellar performance from the old FX Crown. Good numbers there, really good numbers. But yeah, a little bit louder that time as well. So I guess time to get out of this steaming hot shed, go and wipe all the sweat off my forehead, and go and collate some numbers. Alrighty, let's talk some numbers then. Average velocity is what we will start with, muzzle velocity that is. The CCI quiet was averaging 661.2. The Benjamin NP was cranking out at 712 feet per second. The FX on its three different power settings were 581.4, 717.3 and 875 in ascending order. As far as consistency goes for those, however, the Benjamin Nitro Piston beat out the CCI Quiet 22 long rifle just by a smidgen. The standard deviation for the 22 ammo is in the order of about 60 feet per second. So, and the Nitro Piston was only 12. So the muzzle velocity is much more consistent coming out of the air rifles than it is out of the rimfires. And you sort of, you would think that would have a dramatic effect on accuracy, but the actual method, as I said before, of powering those pellets is important because the recoil happens before the pellet has left the barrel. So if you don't know how to shoot a nitro piston Springer, you're not going to have much luck with the accuracy, whereas with the 22, you're pretty much golden because it does the same thing every time. So above both of those two, however, we have all of the FX power settings basically. Even on its lowest power, the FX was running just under 13 feet per second's worth of standard deviation. Power 3 was 7 feet per second. And on max power, where it's tuned to sit nicely, the standard deviation was only 4.5 feet per second, which is pretty bloody good. Let us now talk about power, the thing that everybody really cares about. In ascending order, we have the Benjamin Nitro Piston coming in last with a paltry 17.9 foot-pounds of muzzle energy. It's not much. And it's sort of, if you are going to choose a gun like this, you're probably going to be restricted to soft targets that are quite close. And then after that, we have the FX coming in the penultimate spot with 25.49 foot-pounds of power, and that was at the lowest power setting, obviously. So that's only a muzzle velocity of 581.4. So yep, that's second, and then a very close tie between the middle power setting on the FX and the CCI 22 long rifle ammo. The CCI Quiet came in at 38.82 foot-pounds, and the FX on power 3 was 38.8 foot-pounds. Now, it's important to note that between these two, there are some key differences when you're comparing a rimfire round to a pellet. The pellet washes off speed much quicker than the 22 round does. So if you are looking at stretching it out a little bit further, in my experience, I found the FX to be quite a bit more accurate at longer ranges, but not as powerful technically. The amount of energy delivered onto your target is quite a bit lower, because the 22 maintains its velocity out there because of its higher ballistic coefficient. This could all change very soon when you, if the slugs become available in Australia. But for now, the 22 is actually better when it comes to the ballistic coefficient. And then after that, we've got the FX on max power, and that is delivering a stonking great 57.78 foot-pounds of energy, and it can be tuned higher than that too. You can make a lot more power than that. It's just I've just got mine tuned that way because that's a nice balance between power and noise. If you go much over 900 feet per second with these air guns, they tend to be a little bit noisier, so I've kept mine around the 870 mark, so plenty of clout and not too loud, so very good. And soft segue into noisiness, noise levels. According to my phone with its sound meter, the CCI quiet was actually the quietest, and everything else was measured out to be the same. So I suspect that the sound meter on the phone is just not that sensitive, or it stops when it gets up to about 80 decibels. But yeah, the CCI quiet came in at 77 decibels, and then everything else was either 79 or 80 decibels. To my ear, out in the real world outside, the Benjamin Nitro Piston is actually the quietest. That's just subjective, I suppose. It sounds the quietest to me, followed by the 22, and then after that it's the FX. The FX does make the most noise, but it's also the most accurate. So as far as accuracy goes, I'll give you an idea, because accuracy is also quite subjective depending on the shooter, depending on the environment, the conditions, all those sorts of things. But as far as accuracy goes, with the Benjamin Nitro Piston 22, the best I can do with it is sort of 1-inch groups at about 20 to 25 meters on a good day. So I wouldn't hunt with it out that far. I would sort of hunt with it between 10 and 20 meters. If you're swatting minor birds or cane toads or whatever it is that you're shooting with it, that'd probably be fine for that. But much further out than that, and it's no good. Your mileage may vary. You may be better with a Springer than me. You may even have one. That might be why you're watching this, just out of curiosity to see what somebody else thinks about it. And if you can shoot better than me with it, I believe you. I really do. But as the average layman who may be coming in and buying an air rifle like that as their first rifle because it's quite cheap, buy plenty of ammo and get plenty of practice in, and learn how to shoot it properly, because it can be a real tricky item to shoot with that spring doing what it does. And next in line, I would say, would be the CCI Quiet 22 long rifle. This is also a little bit subjective because your rifle may like the ammo more than mine does. Rimfires can be kind of finicky. They tend to like the ammo that they like and don't like the ammo that they don't like. But I've shot this ammo out of a couple of different CZ rifles and some Savages as well. And the best I can do with them, they're pretty much accurate, again with that 1-inch size group, out to about 35 meters. It starts opening up when you get to 40, and then when you get to 50, there's no point. You're just airmailing lead off to the next postcode. I would put the effective range of the CCI Quiet with that long barrel on the CZ out to sort of 30 to 35 meters at the most. And I would probably hunt with it sort of, if you're looking at like 25 to 30 meters, just to be safe. That's what I would set my expectation at. And last but not least, we've got the FX. The FX is very, very capable, but it is also very, very expensive, so keep that in mind. But it is by far the most accurate. You can easily hunt with it even on the middle power setting, power level 3. You can hunt with it out to 50 meters because you should easily be able to get 1-inch groups at 50 meters. You do have to pay close attention to the wind at that distance, so conditions may change what you're able to do on the day. But yeah, if you have a good tune and if you use the right ammo with it, you'll be able to hunt all the way out to 100 meters with it and make like very, very little noise. So highly recommended. If you want to play, you've got to pay. And finally, let's talk about price. So the CZ will set you back about $1,000. These are Aussie dollars, but you don't have to spend that much if you don't want to. You can get the cheaper versions of it, or you could get something else that's very similar, as long as it has a long barrel. I would say if you actually want to get good quiet results out of a 22, you need to have at least a 24-inch long barrel. Your mileage can vary a little bit on this if you depending on the size of your property and where you're shooting and how quiet you really need to be. But for my purposes on small acreage without bothering the neighbors, it seems to be 24 inches and longer is the sweet spot. So all that barrel absorbs all of the excess noise that would be wasted out of a shorter barrel. The Benjamin will set you back about $350, which is definitely the most affordable of all three. And if you're paying that much, you're probably going to get a little scope with it too. So that's nice. You don't have to spend any extra money on optics or anything like that. A very cost-effective option, but also quite limited in what it can do. So good for plinking, good for hunting out to sort of 15 to 20 meters at the most. But aside from that, that's sort of what it's limited to. And it's also a good low power option too if you are hunting around like in a barn or near houses or something like that. And finally, we come to the cataclysmically expensive FX Crown, which is $2,500 or thereabouts for the model that I have. But when you buy a high-end PCP like that, you need to buy a scope that goes on top of it, and you also need to buy some sort of pump, whether it be a compressor or a hand pump. And even the hand pump, like a good quality hand pump, is going to set you back $400. So you're looking at somewhere between $3,500 and $4,000 when you consider optics and hand pumping as well. So very, very expensive, but also very, very good. So yeah, I guess you gotta think about what you need, what you can afford, and how far you really want to take it. The FX is definitely the most versatile as well, in my opinion. I think the 22 is quite versatile too, because you can run high velocity rounds through it. But really, with the way that air guns are going at the moment, if you do have the budget, I think it's worth diving into the wonderful, weird world of air guns and learning something new if you've never done it before. And those of you who have had PCPs before, I have no doubt that you probably love them just as much as I do. So yeah, that's the go. Go for the FX if you can afford it. Well, that'll about do us for today. I hope that helps you with your quest to find a nice quiet rifle to do whatever it is you need to do. If you enjoyed the video, gently flick that like button. Subscribe if you want to see more from me, and I'll catch you in the next one. Cheers.